So whenever we think about this character, Korach, this enigmatic kind of, you say it in Yiddish, nudnik, this like guy that talking about nudnik, they're over there. Huh? Yeah, no, thank you. We're in the middle of a class. Thank you. Okay. So whenever you think about Korach, that individual that just disrupts essentially your train of thought, or disrupts much more than that. In this case, he disrupted the unity and the oneness of the people that were in the desert, that they were under one leader. They were under Moshe. They were under the high priest of Aharon, the high priest. And no one really had an issue with this scenario that we have these actually three amazing leaders. They all happen to be siblings, but that's besides the point. They were chosen by Hashem, and they were doing a great job in sticking to some very hard trials and tribulations with a lot of difficulties, leading people that were not so simple. But for the most part, it was done, right? Until this one individual, Korach, really disrupts this connection, that a very natural connection that was formed as the nation of Israel. And so why does Korach really have an issue? So we're told that Korach, in the psukim, in the actual verses, Korach had an issue with the appointment of the head of the Levites, and he was called Elitzaphan ben Uziel. Now, Uziel is the youngest of the four sons of Levi. So Levi had four sons: Amram, Yitzhar, Chevron, and Uziel. Amram was the oldest, and Amram had three children. The oldest one was Miriam, Aharon, and Moshe, right? The second one was Uziel. Uziel had a son by the name of Korach. Chevron, there were a bunch of children there. It's not so important. But then the youngest son, Uziel, has a son called Elitzaphan. Now, Elitzaphan is chosen to be the head of the entire Levites, right? So we have, I'm sorry, Levi had three sons, and that was, I just want to correct that. Levi had three sons: Gershon, Kahat, and Merari. Now, under Kahat had these four children. So we're basically looking at who will be the head of the family of Kahat on the Levi side. I just wanted to clarify that. That's really what was going on. And Korach feels slighted by the appointment of his younger cousin to be appointed in what should be his appointment. So who does he rile up about this? He basically can't rile up too many people, because nobody really cares if you get, he was already a man of prominence. It said, there's an expression, rich like Korach. Korach, it says, was probably the richest person in the entire nation. He was one of four that carried the ark in the desert. From the children of Kahat were instructed to take all of the kelim, all the vessels of the Mishkan. They had to be hand carried. So the most prominent hand carried vessel is the ark. What was inside of the ark? The luchos, the tablets of Hashem, the revelation of God in this world. The kedusha is the ark, because inside of the ark are the tablets, both broken tablets and the second tablets. And they were, of course, taken. The ark was taken into the Holy of Holies when the temple was finally built, and there was a whole saga and story with the ark. Once it was taken into the land of Israel and it was captured by the Philistines, until King David finally was able to get it, and he had to fight wars until he gets it back, and the whole honor that is accorded to the ark as it's being carried back to Jerusalem. There was one individual, the Talmud tells us, actually the Navi says in Shmuel Beis, that was disrespectful or was a little bit flagrant in his respect for the ark. His name was Uzzah. He passed from that holiness that was there. So Korach was one of 4 that carried the ark. So we have to get this, that this isn't a simple individual that has an issue with not having enough power. There was something more in this that prompted Korach to, for more. At the end of the day, it was ego. And we're going to talk about the difference between arguments with ego versus arguments which are called, the Mishnah says, l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven, right? But it was something which was a little bit more than meets the eye over here. So what really went on with Korach? So before we go into the Kabbalistic explanation of what Korach is about and what he represents, what did he do to garner political clout and to be able to confront Moshe on that level, which seemed, ridiculous? So what does he do? He goes to the children of Reuven that were on his side they were neighbors. So he knocks on the door, or he barks on the tree of the tribe of Reuven, and he says to them, hey guys, you know what? You're a firstborn, aren't you? You're the firstborn. You're Reuven, right? Reuben, Leah says about you. And then what happened? Look at what happened. Yehuda takes over. Yosef takes over. You just get last dibs. Does that seem fair to you? That's what Korach says, right? And they're like, yeah, Korach, and they're he's getting them, and these are the most prominent people of the tribe of Reuven, including this one individual, On ben Pelet, that was one of them. And the story is that his wife was a smart wife that saved his life, because she saved him out of being in the political meeting that day, where Korach's life and the life of the whole assembly really went down the hill, literally, right? She saved him. But so what does he do? Korach wears a talit, a prayer shawl, right? Basically a baha, if you would just kind of try to picture that, which was all blue. It's this beautiful shawl made out of blue, out of techelet, and he shows up with these 250 individuals, all with their, decked with their techelet, uniforms. They were in style, they're showing up into the office, into the assembly of Moshe and Aharon, and they're like, who appointed you? Who made you ruler over us? I've got a big question for you. If you're really divine, you're really godly, answer me this. Does this prayer shawl require the tzitzit, right? The tzitzit that comes out of the prayer shawl. Do you need the tzitzit or not? Now, let me explain this, because of those that are not familiar with what exactly that means. So in last week's Parsha Shlach, we learned about the mitzvah of tzitzit. The mitzvah of tzitzit is essentially any garment which is of 4 corners. We're instructed that we should attach what is called a tzitzit. Tzitzit literally means like from the word latzitz, to sprout forth. And it's supposed to remind us on a literal level that God exists everywhere. It's supposed to remind us of the mitzvot. We're supposed to remind us of being godly individuals in our walk, right? As we walk with God, we walk in our day-to-day. The tzitzit is supposed to remind us of that. And that's the idea, that the prayer shawl, or it's not a prayer shawl, any garment that has 4 garments, the tzitzit is supposed to remind one and supposed to sprout forth so that we could see it, much like a mezuzah is on the door. We see it and we're reminded of Hashem. And in fact, all of the mitzvot are reminders, because they remind us. They're to just, we do this. Oh, I'm reminded that I should be more God conscious. I should be more mindful of Hashem in my life, in this mitzvah and that mitzvah, and they're all different. They come from the right side, the left side, the Chesed side, the Gevurah side, the Tiferet side, etc. We're reminded on all aspects of our lives that God exists, in all the highs and lows, and all the, all of the cacophony, right, of sound that is there in our life. God exists in all of it, and that's what all of the mitzvot do, and that's what the tzitzit specifically has to do. So now Korach shows up to Moshe in this parsha, and he's like, what's the point of having these reminders if that's who I am in my essence? Like I already have the prayer shawl. I'm already reminded, because let me just go back to the idea of the tzitzit and elaborate more on what the tzitzit actually is comprised of. It's comprised of white strings, actually 7 white strings, according to most opinions, and 1 blue string, which is called the techelet. The blue string, the Talmud tells us, what's the idea of the blue? The blue reminds us of the ocean. The ocean reminds us of the sky. And the sky reminds us of the kisei kavod, of the divine chariot of Hashem. So when it says, "Uritem oto," you should see it, that we see that blue, we're reminded and we feel the awe. And according to Kabbalah, the white strings represent the realm of Chesed, of kindness, the white. And the blue represents the aspect of Gevurah, because it's supposed to remind us. It goes from below to above. The blue then reminds us to look upwards and to pay attention this way. And that's the realm of Gevurah, it's the realm of Malchut, and that's the idea of the blue of the ocean that reminds us of the blue of the heavens, which is the ocean of Chachma, of divine wisdom, which is awe. And we're awed by Hashem in the world, right? And actually the color of the city of Tzfat is what? Is blue, is light blue, right? Which comes from the Kinneret. And now 1 blue string, it exempts the entire talit from any other blue, because it's enough. Like the 1 blue just does the job basically to give us that awe. And then, that's all that's required. We don't put more than 1 string or two strings, according to another opinion, which is 1 full string, which is divided into 2, but it's still the idea of just 1, because the idea of 1 is that within that reminder, we get the picture. But the majority of the strings are white. The majority of the strings are the idea of chesed, of kindness. And that's what Korach came to do. Korach argued, and he basically came along and he said, what if the entire garment is blue? Why do I need anything else? Because if the whole idea is to remind us, what's the idea of why is there any need for the white? There's already the blue.
One sleeve is not enough for him. He put all the
Talit shekula tchelet. He put, he's like,
Like it's fun. They wear colors.
So what was he doing over here? What was his question? What was his upschlag? What was his question? What was he really doing here, right? He was basically arguing with this point on the whole leadership of Moshe and Aaron. And at first, he really went against Aaron directly. He said, who told you? You just appointed your brother to the highest position of being a Kohen, the high priest. And he was arguing essentially on the whole priesthood, the whole idea of what the kahuna, the Kohen energy is all about, because he was a Levite. And from his Levite energy, he was about the elevation from below to above. And he said, well, which one is higher? Is above to below higher? The idea of the kahuna, the idea of what Kabbalah calls the right side of chesed, of loving kindness. Is that the higher frequency? And that's the frequency of Aaron. And Aaron is described as having a beard, right? The beard of Aaron, King David says, is the idea, and the whole idea, the Kabbalistic idea of actually having a beard is very, very deep, because it has to do with the drawing down of wisdom through the midot, through the characteristic traits. So King David says, Shir Ma'alot, right? Zakan Aharon, the beard of Aaron, Hayored al pi midotav, that descends down his midot, the characteristic traits, the zer anpin, the sphirot, are drawn down via the frequency, via of chesed, of kindness. That's the idea of Aaron, the high priest. Whereas Korach, the Levite, the Levi, has the frequency of Gevurah, of being a Levi, and it says that Aaron, that Korach and all the Levites were completely shaved.
Totally.
They were completely shaved. It says shaved like a
Like a fish.
they were completely shaved like what do you call it on
Kaufman.
anyways, doesn't matter. Like they were supposed to be completely
No hair.
completely let go of any hair. Why? Because the hair represents the drawing down. Again, the idea of the tzitzit is the drawing down, almost like the hairs, right? Is the drawing down. And from their perspective of the Levites, there's no need to draw down, because God exists within the space and within the here and now in such a way that we basically have to elevate in order to receive that revelation of Hashem. So the revelation doesn't have to descend down to us necessarily, because we all heard on Mount Sinai the word of Hashem within the world. So we all have the ability to reveal God within the world, and therefore there's no need for the hierarchy of Aaron, but also basically Moshe. There's no need for the hierarchy, because we all heard from on Mount Sinai, Nase v'nishma, we will do and then we will listen. In other words, that within the world, we are able to reveal godliness just like Moshe, because we're all on this journey of revealing that. So pretty profound words that he had, and intentions. And this was a major argument. And the reason why it was so major, because there was a truth to it. It essentially came from ego, but there was truth to it, because it says that Korach saw in his, in his visions, right? And he was, again, a very lofty individual. And he was able to see his generations, his offsprings in the future, working there in the Mishkan, in the temple. And they would sing the Psalms called Lamnatzeach Livnei Korach, right? Many of the songs of King David adapted, or he heard, or he took from the children of Korach. And he saw them there. And not only that, he saw his great offspring, Samuel, Shmuel, the last of the Nevi'im, the last of the Shoftim, right? He saw him. That was his offspring. And it says about Shmuel, Samuel, Moshe ve'Aharon b'choanav, that Moshe and Aaron are compared to Shmuel. Shmuel ve'Bekari Shemo. Shmuel was so great that Moshe and Aaron are compared to Shmuel. So he saw that all in the future, and he's like, I've got a pretty good case over here. Now, to make this deeper, really, what was he going after? He was going after a very cosmic and basically Mashiach-ic, redemptive kind of concept. He was after the notion that what is the world going to be like when Mashiach comes? We're going to paskin, we're going to go according to the opinion of Beit Shammai, that currently we have the opinion of Beit Hillel, which is Chesed, which is kindness, and we have then the opinion of Beit Shammai. And according to the Arizal, he says, what's a machloket shesofa litkayem? At the end, it's going to be upheld. That's the machloket. That's the argument of Hillel and Shammai. So the commentaries ask, what does that mean? It's going to be fulfilled. There's only one opinion. How could you say that both are the opinions if you're following one? So the Arizal says, no, now we follow the opinion of Beit Hillel. But machloket shesofa litkem, at the end, the opinion of Beit Shammai is going to be also the opinion. And Beit Shammai was the idea of Gevurah, of the revelation of God in this world, that the world is able to withstand, essentially, this revelation, the revelation of awe of Hashem in the world. That's the idea of the blue string. That awe, there's only one blue string, because currently we cannot, we can't have that much awe, right? And even nowadays, if we think about it, this, especially like as, more and more, like the younger the generations, it's much harder to instill awe, right? Isn't it? Even for us, when you think about it, it's like, years ago, we were able to elicit a certain unfiltered level of awe, right? But now, as things are going on and faster and faster in the world, and so much to process, it's very difficult for us to have this level of awe, of true awe, because of all of the information that we have, that we can't really meditate properly on a concept for a prolonged amount of time to really bring awe, because that's what the blue of the string is. It's an awareness, and it's a meditation, and that takes sifting out of what not to pay attention to. So in order to pay attention to what one is focusing on, and we know that we're bombarded with so many stimuli, unless we make a conscious notion. So that's currently we need a lot of chesed, of kindness, that despite the fact that we're not there, and despite the fact that we could only sit for 5 minutes at a time, right? Our attention span is down to like 60 seconds. Despite that, every little thing that someone does is so precious in Hashem's eyes. And it's so incredible, like how much Hashem loves us. And that's the truth, right? To have the perspective of the kindness, of the goodness of Hashem in our lives, and to pay attention to that goodness, as opposed to well, I haven't met the mark of being this and this and that, of learning this, of which is very hard to really live by for the majority of people. But this is what Korach saw. And this is what Korach, again, the carrier of the ark, who was on this level of awe in his life, he wanted the entire world to be on that level, because that's the level Beit Shammai when Mashiach comes, that we are going to feel the presence of Hashem in the world in an incredible way all the time. Right? Nowadays, we have a choice either to ignore it or to embrace it, and or to be distracted, which is basically ignoring, or to numb it, which is the other thing, or to embrace that one string, right? That little blue string of awe that is saying, oh, wow, 5 minutes of the day, I thought about you, Hashem. 2 minutes of the day, I said Tehillim. I did a kind deed. Incredible. The blue is not the end in and of itself. It is serving the white. It's serving the chesed. What I do is not supposed to mark me as I'm either good or bad. I'm a failure or not. I'm not perfect. Therefore, why do anything? It's looking at the small successes and being so appreciative and happy with the small successes, even though they're not as good or as great as we compare everything to in our minds. And that is the argument of Korach and Aharon. It's the argument of, look how beautiful of an individual you are for trying to come close to Hashem and picking on the good things and looking for the good points. Whereas Korach is like, you call that like, something? That's nothing. That's small change compared to what this is. And you should be striving to get. Most people are not on that level. We cannot handle that type of punitive. It's coming from probably a good place, but it's punitive. And especially this generation, as we're going, in previous generations, parenting and schooling was very punitive. And the generation, like these generations, like kids really can't handle much, punitive punishment. Like it just has to come from that place of love as much as possible. It doesn't mean no discipline, but the discipline is supposed to be the discipline that is serving the chesed. The left hand is underneath the right hand. We're told that the blessing, the Kohanic blessing, which thank God I merit to do just today, according to the halacha, it's supposed to be the left hand underneath the right hand, because the idea of the left hand is the Gevurah, the discipline, the strictness, right? It's supposed to be underneath the chesed. The chesed is what prevails. That energy of loving kindness is what must manifest the most, right, in this world. The Gevurah is supposed to help give the structure and the discipline, but the love has to be there. The love must be there for our spouses, for our partners, for our children, for our parents, for our coworkers, right? It's come when we come from that, and most importantly, for ourselves, because for ourselves, very often we're so punitive, right? And those voices of perfectionism are voices that really come from a very often broken and non-healthy place of discipline that we either saw in the past or have, just still have in our memories that are going through. But real discipline from the side of Kedusha, of holiness, is subordinate to Chesed. It's Chesed first. The Gevurah isn't the end of its own, which is why Yitzchak, who was the idea of Gevurah, loved Esav, right? He thought that, wow, he's got such a powerful energy there. Yitzchak is Gevurah, but he was wrong. But he stand corrected, because it was about Yaakov, who's the fixed element of Chesed within him, because Gevurah must be tapered, right? And it must be mixed in with Chesed, which is why there's a Kabbalistic custom on Friday night that when we make Kiddush, when we sanctify the Shabbat and bring in the Shabbat, we pour in wine. Wine is Gevurah, represents Gevurah. That's what wine represents. And we take the wine and we elevate the wine, right, to Hashem. But there's a Kabbalistic custom to pour 3 drops of water into the wine. And that means that we're supposed to sweeten, Kabbalistically speaking, the Gevurah, that energy of discipline, and it could be intensity, right? The intensity that we often feel. If it's anxiety, and it's a lot of people going through that's intensity of Gevurah that needs to be mixed in with those 3 drops of water. And the drops of water is the idea of the Chesed, of the flow of kindness, that the energy of Hashem in the world is an energy of Olam Chesed Ibanen, that the world, it comes from the energy of Chesed. God wanted a world of goodness, of kindness, and he wants to bestow that energy into the world. But Korach thought that this is the end. This is where we should all be. And basically Hashem said, not so fast. We're not there yet. We have to have a world of kindness. And you have to remember that in order to reach that level of Gevurah, that level of where Korach is at, we have to have a lot of love that we're first working through. We have to work through a lot of love and get rid of the punitive, judgmentalism, hatred, strife, right? Which is, right? I don't have to tell any of you what we're, what's out there. And Hashem is saying it's Chesed. Aharon is where is our go-to man, right? Aharon is that energy, and we're first going through a process. And this process is a long-term process. And actually, it does have to do with Korach, because Korach's great-grandchild, right? Shmuel anointed King David. King David adapted in his Psalms the songs of the children of Korach, who the children of Korach survived the whole downfall, the whole episode, by screaming out to God and saying, we hear this, not yet. Like, please, don't take us yet. We still have a lot to do. There's some truth, there's some validity, and we're ready to work with you. kind of a thing. Like, we're ready to work. Fine, we're going to work with Aharon. We're going to be subordinate to that energy. Like, let's go. No questions from now on. Like, we got the point. This is serious here. And they had an area in, right, where the earth opened up its mouth, and with that basically saying that, no, Korach, you're a little bit too pretentious, and there's an ego there. There isn't what we call bittul. Bittul is a nullification to Hashem, to the tzaddik, and the tzaddik is, you don't know everything. You may be a great person, but if you're not bittul, if you're not nullified to the tzaddik, ve'aminu b'Hashem uve'Moshe avdo, then you're just doing things on your own accord, and that disrupts the entire flow of what the nation of Israel really represents, which is the emunah, the belief in the tzaddikim, in the rabbanan, in the idea that there is the written Torah, and then there's the oral Torah, and then there is the whole lineage, right, of what we call the Masorah of Torah that comes down into the world. And once someone comes along and says, no, well, who told you that? Like, I think it should be like this. Like, I think like it's because, we're just on the same level of playing field. So then I could do what, and so basically there was a validity, though, not in the ego of Korach, but in the inner aspect of what Korach really was after. And the validity was that at the end of days, there's going to be chesed, kindness, loving kindness. That's going to be the prevalent energy that is able to take that energy of Gevurah, of strength, of the Levite, of that self-confidence, that expression, that power, which is below to above, which is the power of kingship. The power of King David is the power of Gevurah, because Malchut is comprised of, Kabbalah teaches us, of Gevurah. A king has the majority of Gevurah within him. And that's what it says about King David, that he had, the Midrash says, two types of eyes. He was a kind, so Malchut is basically fixed Gevurah. It's Chesed and Gevura together, because it just really absorbs them all. But it's the majority of Gevurah, of strength, but it's the Chesed that really sweetens it. So it says King David had beautiful what kind of eyes? Blue eyes.
Not green, huh?
He had blue. He had light, beautiful tov ro'i. The pasuk said he had beautiful eyes, and people say, and they walk past the Lubavitcher Rebbe for dollars, or they had an audience with him. This, what most people say, what they remember is the eyes, is those blue eyes that were just like, it was like the ocean that was just like looking at them, that you almost get lost in those eyes. And so King David had these beautiful tovri, beautiful blue eyes of kingship, of kindness, right? But it also says that when King David was mad or upset, and he had to go out to war and really fight the wars of Hashem, his eyes turned red. But he had this Gevurah, this strength about him of fighting God's enemies and being a warrior for God. But the primary aspect that he's even under is the high priest, right? That is the priesthood, and he actually worked together with Tzadok Kohen, which we actually come from, and Pinchas, right? And eventually, right, or before that, and that energy of Chesed is what is the primary energy of kingship. Chayasi, is that a weakness or a destined trajectory? that children and ourselves can handle punitive means. Or is a rectification? Right. So it's definitely a rectification. Like right now, we're fixing really Gevurah. We're fixing punitive. We're fixing what Gevurah means, because we came to a point that there's almost no boundaries for kids or for young adults, that basically we're saying, well, if you want to say there's no gender, we don't want to hurt your feelings, Timmy. So basically, there's no, there's no boundaries, and even the boundaries of the birds and the bees, the boundaries of our own physicalities are just, there's nothing there. That means like, that's not chesed, that's not kindness. And the old level of Gevurah, of taking a student, and because they talked that out in class, and then hitting their hand with a with a big stick, is not punitive, is not a proper punishment. But there's something in the middle. There's something way in the middle between these two ways of handling our ourselves, our youth, our society, between being overly strict and being completely boundaryless of having, basically normal, sane, just borders, which are very much in sync with, our natural beings. And it doesn't mean that everyone is the same, obviously, but there's the basics that we want to aim towards, which of course we have that from, those lessons from Torah. And I think as we're coming closer and closer to the times of Mashiach, we're really assessing and we're separating, and we're doing the inner work of assessing what didn't work in the past for Gevurah, what didn't work for Chesed, and what kind of a person do I really want to be now, currently? Do I choose to be now, currently? And what do I want to install in who I am? Because it's basically installing that perspective, and we could do that by doing the constant work on that. So, and that's what we call avoda. So Hashem is putting us in a place of avoda, that people are completely lost, and we look at it and we're like, what do we even do? But we have a choice to decide what we really want to be and which direction we really want to go. And even the fear of being like an outcast, or being like one of the few that are doing this within so many people that are confused, is making the story a lot more scary, because I don't want to be alone. Nobody wants to do, to think that they're, they don't have, other people that they're doing it with. First of all, Avraham, the first Jew, right? He was the one that did that. Avraham Ivri, he was completely on his own in a world that was completely foreign. And throughout Jewish history, we were basically doing that. And probably as difficult, if not more difficult. So history, we know, just repeats itself. And basically we have more power than we think that we do, right? We're not as weak as, or fragile that as we think that we are. We have thousands of years of, right? We have a lot of inner fortitude of netzach, right, within us. And but then also whatever we see is, and that fear is also something of Gevurah that needs to be fixed. Because really, like, if I choose to live a more elevated, godly, God-centered life, a more conscious life, like, why is that weirder than someone that decides to change their gender, right? Or to be on 24/7 on their device and be completely absorbed in who knows what. So, like, we're living in a world that's like, if I want to live a more of a elevated, godly Torah, spiritual life, it's really only strange to ourselves in our own minds. And it's our own fear that we're fearing of like, what if I actually do embrace who I am, right? And we kind of often do that, and it disrupts us from making like the choices and going on the path as fast as possible, or but it's because of the self-doubt that a lot of us have. But like during this time, right, it says like we're basically being like sifted, right? Izdakeku rabim, right? That we're being sifted from old ideologies, from ways, right, of being, from years of epigenetics. So no pressure at all, but we have to give ourselves a lot of slack as well, and a lot of love from that Hashem really gives to us, and that doesn't mean like, oh, I'm great, let me just go grab the whole tub of Haagen-Dazs and just like, jump into my own like pampered, like it doesn't mean that. That's not really like feeling, that's external. That's, to really feel like Hashem's love is to say, thank you, Hashem, you love me. Be'ava, bocher ba'amoisa be'ava, God, that Hashem, you really love me. And it's not fake. It's a real thing. And meditating on that and feeling that. If it's from like a bite of Haagen-Dazs ice cream, by all means, like that's why Hashem has it there. So you should enjoy it. But enjoy it, recognize that he gave you that that amazing taste, and yet you're enjoying him in that, and then he loves you, and that's why he's giving you this gift, right? And I'm not like eating the Haagen-Dazs because that's my gift. That's what I love. You love Hashem. You're just Hashem, the ice cream is just like a little bit of just a sweet taste, a reminder of how much you're really beloved by Hashem. So we need Aaron. Aaron is our high priest. Abigail?
Wouldn't you say that experiencing the love of Hashem is that whoever you meet who does a kindness, or just living in the world, or getting up and brushing your teeth, that becomes your Haagen-Dazs? That to experience everything is as a bite of Haagen-Dazs.
100%. The mundane is such a blessing.
Yeah, to have that much gratitude.
The mundane is called the present, right? The now is the present. It's a present. It's the greatest present. And for people that are let's say are given this amount of time, like that let's say that they're told, that there's time over here that you now have. What would you do with that time? There's a story. It's kind of, there's a story, kind of a funny story, that there's a guy that was told by the doctors, his name was Herschel, you've got 2 months to live. Now this Herschel was like no one liked him. He was this like mean, underhanded type of a guy. He was a not straight individual. He owed people money. He did the wrong things. And now the doctor tells him he's got 2 months. So this Herschel gets up. First thing he does is he puts on a big smile for his wife and for his kids. He goes out and he pays back this person. And he's just like the nicest guy. And everyone's like, what happened to Herschel? And he's just like this happiest person. He's completely changed. And so he goes back, he's got like 2 months to live, and he's like looking around, and he goes back to the doctors. It's been 2 months. And the doctors say to him, hey, like, what are you doing here? And he said, well, you told me, right, that I had 2 months to live. So they said, no, that was the other Herschel. We by accident told you someone else's prognosis. You're totally fine. Like, you're totally healthy. Like, go home. And he said, are you serious? You know what I did? I paid back people. I was so nice. I was just this. And now you're telling me it was all for nothing.
I worked so hard. Nice.
It was, what do I do? So we have this, we have these 2 months, we have we have this chesed, right? What would we do? What do we do? And that's the present. Every single day is exactly, Avigail, is that Haagen-Dazs, right? That we have, like brushing our teeth, like taking a step, walking. It's Hashem that is loving us and feeling that. Not like, well, how well did you perform that task? That judgmental self asks, right? Whereas, why am I wasting time judging myself all the time? Why can't I just be present and feel Hashem's love in this experience with gratitude? That's the Ches, that's Aharon, that's the Kahuna, those are the Kohanim, and that's the idea of the tzitzit coming down, that the strings are coming down, that the beard of Aaron is flowing down. And after that, after this episode, the kahuna, right, the priesthood is established with the notion of the almond tree. And the idea of the almonds is that they blossom very quickly. And the idea of quickly seeing Hashem's light, like not waiting and waiting. Like Gevurah is like, you haven't done this so well. When are you going to do it this well? When are you going to keep on? And it's looking into like the long term. Whereas short term, which is quick, the idea of the kahuna is like, oh, right now I have water. Thank you, Hashem. Like, again, like we're mostly in that Gevurah kind of a thing, but the left side is subordinate to the right side, to Aharon, right? That energy, that flow of Hashem's love is way more substantial than the flow of strictness, of judgment, right? And yeah,
they are faster.
right. The blessing of the Kohanim.
It goes like this straight to you.
Exactly. The blessing of the Kohanim actually comes down very quickly in the prayer, whereas prayer is below to above. Actually, the idea of the Levites, where we go below to above, and we go through the structured prayer, and then the Kohanim blessings are above to below, and it really just, right, draws down that shefa into our lives, via that prayer. Yeah, small dochek v'yami mekares, right? The left pushes away and the right draws in, which is the most important part. Okay, so I think we're gonna pause over here, and I'd like to give everyone the Kohanic blessing. All right, I'd like to share that. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe לאמור, דבר אל אהרון ואל בניו לאמור, כה תברכו את בני ישראל לאמור להם, יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. שמו את שמי על בני ישראל ואני אברכם. Many blessings, everyone, for a great week and a beautiful Shabbat with lots of love, a lot of goodness. And may that love of Hashem be drawn down into this world. Chaya, only in shul, only when we have the hands up officially. This was an unofficial blessing, but official.
I really felt that.
Yeah.
Toda Rabba. Amen, amen, amen.
Amen.
Hashem.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, everyone. Many blessings.